This is 17-year-old Harvey Owen with his beloved guitar. His mum remembers him playing it the night before he and his friends set off on a camping trip to North Wales in November.
You'll remember this story. The car the boys were travelling in was later found upside down, partially submerged in water, and all four teenagers, Jevon Hirst, Harvey Owen, Wilf Fitchett and Hugo Morris, died at the scene.
Now, Harvey's mum, Crystal, has started a petition calling for tougher licensing rules for young drivers. Under the proposals, there will be a ban on carrying passengers under the age of 25 for a year and restrictions on night driving.
Well, last month, public health officials in Wales backed those calls, but changing the law would be up to the UK government.
Well, Crystal is here with us now alongside Dr. Elizabeth Box from the RAC Foundation. Thank you both very much indeed for coming in. Crystal, thank you. I know it's incredibly early days, but you're here to talk about Harvey and what happened to him and something you now feel incredibly passionate about in order to protect other young people.
Definitely, yeah.
What would you like to see change and what have you learned in the last 4 awful months?
I've learned that obviously we don't know what our children are up to 24 hours a day. It's impossible. The night Harvey left, he twisted the truth in terms of what he was doing that weekend. I had proof of where he was going the first night. I didn't know any friends of his that drove. We did know his circle of friends, but we were unaware that he had a friend who drove. So he told us one of the parents was driving. Didn't think to question it because, like I say, I was unaware of any other friends. He told us he was getting the train back, and that was it really. He was playing his guitar. I was telling him how proud I was of him. His little sisters were dancing around in the room, and it was, yeah, I told him I was really proud and I loved him that night just because he was playing a new song that he'd learnt, and he knew I really liked the song. So packed his bag, no sign of a camping trip. It was just general clothes and things. And so it's highlighted to me as a parent that although Harvey did twist the truth to do what he wanted to do, he was just a teenager. Teenagers do this all the time. They think they know best, basically.
And he probably didn't want to worry you.
No. So I am aware that Harvey did, however, take risks. He was always, every day I was texting him, get your earphones out, put your helmet on his bike. And although he wasn't driving at the time, I know that when he was, that this could have easily just been,
But as you say, there are parents of teenagers probably watching this at home thinking, my child is the same. How, as John says, are they trying to protect you a little bit? And are they trying to push the boundaries and be more independent?
I mean, we've all done it. We've all done it as teenagers, it's... And I think as a parent, this is not about pointing blame at anyone. I think at the end of the day, as a parent, we all know when young boys especially start driving that they're slightly more at risk, but we have no idea, and nobody is going to become a road traffic expert or look into the actual facts and the statistics unless it's happened to them. And unfortunately, that's in the position I am now in. And I was completely shocked by actually how dangerous they are and how at risk. And that's my mission now, is to make other parents aware and to get the law changed.
So let's talk about that mission of yours. What would you like to see change? So
it's given the young drivers the experience on the roads in the conditions that they need. It's not always driving to the speed, it's driving to the conditions of the road. It's given them the time that they need. At the moment, there's no restrictions on how many lessons they need to have. Crash courses are a thing, and they can literally, the day after filling their car, they could technically fill a car full of, fill the car with their friends, basically, and drive on some of the most dangerous roads.
So you'd like to see what limits?
So it'd be a minimum of 40 hours to give them the range of experience on roads in different conditions, driving at night.
Before they could pass their test?
Yes, yeah.
Right.
And then the restrictions at night, that's been put in the petition because there is evidence, a huge amount of evidence to prove that young drivers are more at risk at night. So that's why that's in there. And
once they've passed their test, how would you like the law to change in terms of carrying passengers?
So they wouldn't be able to take peer passengers, so peer age passengers, so under the age of 25. And the reason the age is 25 is, Elizabeth will tell you more, but it's obviously the psychology behind the brains. This is all backed with research, and in every country it's been tried, it's worked and has reduced deaths. So it's, they wouldn't be able to take drivers under the age of 25 because they're 4 times more likely to crash.
So, Elizabeth, is this a case of maybe trying to protect young, newly qualified drivers from themselves for a little longer?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Crystal's really very well explained the whole problem we face here. So we know that young and novice drivers are at extreme risk when they first pass their test, particularly for that first 12 months or 6 to 12 months after passing. If we look worldwide, 5 to 29-year-olds, the biggest cause of death in that group is road traffic injuries. So that in the UK, they're 7% of all licence holders, but they're involved in 24% of all killed and seriously injured collisions. So they're really overrepresented. So really what Crystal's been talking about is some really good evidence-based initiatives around the world. It reduces those killed and seriously injured by 20 to 40% where it's been introduced. I mean, as a researcher, we look at all sorts of research, and often there's disagreement about what would be effective. There's absolutely no disagreement across the world that this is the best policy for improving safety of young and novice drivers.
How would parts of it work? For example, the Crystal's idea about having to young drivers having to do, say, 40 hours of driving before they could pass their test. How would you log that, for example?
Yeah, so getting all of that experience and on-road experience is vitally important. So actually in Australia, where they have it in place, they require 120 hours of practice. Before
Wow.
actually even taking their test. So 40 would be the absolute minimum we'd be looking for. And this doesn't need to be just with private instructors. It could be if you've got parents, guardians, or some other suitable supervising driver that can take you out, that would be great. So really getting that mileage under your belt, it really helps you understand what's happening on the road and being able to improve your hazard perception and awareness.
I know, Crystal, you've had a letter from the Prime Minister, I believe.
Yeah. Shortly after the boys died, we received a letter passing condolences on it. It was a very personal letter to Harvey. I did write back, so I would like a meeting with the Transport Minister. And so we're waiting on that now.
What would you say?
I think it's so hard for people at home. I've done it myself to really, really understand the devastation, and I do understand the counter arguments, and I've seen them, and I probably would have felt the same prior to this happening. But I think the ripple effects, with the 4 boys, 4 families, all through Shrewsbury, has been affected, and it is a grief that you can never, ever get over. And I think I challenge anybody who's in opposition to this to actually be affected by a road crash death and still object to it, basically. So I think they're not just statistics on paper, and it's really hard for people to correlate that with their actual, nobody ever expects. This was the last thing on my list of things that I was worried about with Harvey. It was not even on the radar. He wasn't even interested in driving, and you think you know their friends at that age, but no parent knows everything about their child, and so this is why it's so important. The choice needs to be taken away from them, because that's the only way that it's going to work.
I'm sure everybody watching this morning, all of us here in the studio, have massive respect for the fact that, just a few weeks later, you're using your position, your terrible position, to try and help others. I guess you feel a need, really, to use this in some way.
I mean, it's the absolute last thing I want to be doing is sitting here. I've not even been able to pick up my children from school. I've barely left the house. But as a parent of 3 other children, I am so passionate about this. I actually worked with young people for years. I worked in the youth service for over 10 years, and this is just as much a killer of young people and all the things that we concentrate on, and yet it's not given the attention it's needed. This was never a topic within the youth clubs with the young people, and yet it's a leading killer of young people.
And Elizabeth, in the meantime, until there is a potential change, what can parents do to try and tell their children, to teach their children about staying safe?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think what Crystal's doing today is really important, because it highlights to other parents actually how risky that first 6 to 12 months of driving is. There's a few things that parents can do and young people can do. So when they're thinking about buying a vehicle, seeing if they can buy the most safe vehicle they can within their budget. Something under 10 years old would be best if they can, under 6 if they can as well, because it's going to have the safety technology. insurance is really expensive for young people at the moment. So actually, if they can get telematics insurance, you know, the black box in the car that kind of monitors your driving, that can kind of help give them the feedback they need, and can also provide some sort of supportive, say they are being encouraged by peers to speed. Well, actually, if they've got a black box in the vehicle, it makes it really hard to do so. And I guess the other thing is really just getting as much experience as you can under your belt before you pass your test. Try and drive for 12 months before taking your test, and try and get near 100 hours if you possibly can.
Try and drive for 12 months before taking your test.
That would be what we would recommend in ideal, because you get all the different weathers and circumstances, and you'll experience that as well. And, you know, as Crystal said, being a teenager, it is a risky environment you're in for a whole host of reasons. So being able to work through in advance, if I'm in this situation, then what am I going to do? And planning that and working with them to develop those capabilities so they have something to fall back on is really important as well.
Thank you both so much for coming in and talking about this, particularly you, Crystal. And we're all thinking of you, and we'll continue to follow the progress of your campaign. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.